Sing it with me, Tyrone. Oh. Go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go. Knicks start their first title run in 50 years tonight.
Oh, the best part about it is that they're just going about handling their business. I was listening to Arvell Reese and his literally like 5-word sentences about himself and some of the things that Caleb has been talking about. The dudes are just so locked in here about just doing their job and not worrying about all the other things and awards. They know all those happen when you go win and you win decisively.
The Bobby Carpenter Show, only on SportsGrid.
Baker Mayfield is the most important player on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they are in first place right now, looking dead in the eye of home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They played a bad division. They're going to win a lot of games, and they're the best fourth quarter team, or at least the 2-minute warning team in all football. So, don't sleep on that.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Awesome and monumentous win against Oregon. Texas has saved their season. Texas has given themselves life to potentially crash the college football playoff party. For OU, a loss to Texas shouldn't be the end of your season. And yet with that remaining schedule, it feels like it could be. Books certainly pricing it that way. A lot of movement off of the Red River rivalry.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Paige or Caitlin? Who do you take and why?
I think for the WNBA, in a sense where they're moving toward more guards when it's been very post and big heavy in the past. But there's a reason why Caitlin Clark set all those records at college and then went into the WNBA and set all those records immediately. I really do think she's just a different level talent.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Did NBC's NBA tip-off live up to the hype? Plus, the Ravens locker room, no fun anymore. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Front Office Sports Today from FOS Studios here in New York City. I'm Baker Machado.
And I'm Renee Washington, and thanks so much for joining us as each and every weekday we chat the biggest stories in the business and culture of sports. We also have ESPN's Brian Windhorst on later to talk all the NBA news stories he's following. But first, let's dive into the shoot-around.
Yeah, very busy show, Renee, but let's start in hockey, where the NHL has canceled a planned Olympic send-off event in February at UBS Arena that's home to the New York Islanders. Now, this was scheduled as a replacement for the upcoming 2026 All-Star Weekend. ESPN's Emily Kaplan says the league will instead hold their 2027 All-Star Weekend festivities at UBS Arena. The league decided to allow players time to focus on traveling to Milan for the upcoming Olympics, which will see the NHL pause its season to allow players to compete in the games, Renee, for the very first time in 12 years.
Yes, and after last year's success of the Four Nations replacing the All-Star Game, there was speculation around if we would see the NHL All-Star Game pivot for this upcoming 2026. So they launched back around the Olympics and the exciting announcement that the NHL was returning to the Olympics, this send-off event. We had no idea what it was going to look like, but the season's underway. We're still unsure about what the arena is going to look like for the Olympics. So the Olympics Committee has been under some scrutiny, but now also the NHL pulls the plug on what was supposed to be an exciting send-off event. We already knew that 2027 was going to be at UBS Arena, but now it seems they're scaling back and honestly changing up the plan for what the All-Star Game is going to look like. So a little bit of a surprise there.
All right, meanwhile, speaking of surprises, the Spanish soccer league, La Liga, has canceled their planned regular season match in Miami between Barcelona and Villarreal. This after players from both clubs protested playing the December regular season game, which would have been the very first regular season match from a major European soccer league played in the U.S. Relevant Sports, the international soccer promoter, had been working with La Liga for years to get a match in Miami, and it's unclear now if the group plans to attempt to move a different game now to that city this season.
What a quick turnaround. Another cancellation that we're hearing from a league, because it was back in August when they even announced officially that the game was going to be played in December in Miami. Then this past weekend, about 10 teams protested with that 15-second protest of standing on the field. The broadcast did not show it, but we got all the news and updates around it. And then come Tuesday, they make the decision to cancel altogether. Now, some players have actually come out frustrated in the clubs because they also said they were supposed to have a meeting prior to this cancellation speculation news to talk about what the plan was, but instead they also pulled the plug on this event, and there's no real plan of what Villarreal is going to do in terms of making up that home game they were supposed to host in Miami. They're saying they're canceling it altogether. So questions regarding lack of involvement for the players and the clubs, but also how this is going to impact their schedule, their standings, other components, because they didn't even want the game in the first place.
Yeah,
but now they wrap their head around the game, and then it's canceled.
Yeah, and by the way, La Liga even released a statement saying that they're kind of sad about the missed economic opportunity from something like this, because they feel like they need to grow the sport like the NFL does with all their European games and Major League Baseball with their games in Japan, that La Liga and these soccer clubs need these international games for the exposure. But if you have players and a lot of other people against it, I don't know what they do here.
That's been the problem, mixing up the tradition of playing at home in domestic cities versus how do you expand and do something new.
All right, well, during an appearance on the Today Show, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said WNBA players would get a big pay increase in their ongoing labor dispute with the league, but he pointed to, quote, absolute numbers as the growth measurement as opposed to share of revenue. Silver said, quote, I think share isn't the right way to look at it because there's so much more revenue in the NBA. I think you should look at absolute numbers in terms of what they're making. Well, that comment didn't sit very well with the WNBA Players Association, who tagged Silver on an Instagram story with the caption, don't want to share?
Baker, this was supposed to be an interview to generate excitement around the NBA's 80th season, especially with the new media deal with NBC. And leading up to the season opener Tuesday, instead the question came up around the WNBA. And Craig Melvin asked a fantastic question that needed to be asked regarding what the WNBA is going to do. Adam Silver did not hold back. He deserves to be questioned. He does oversee Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner. The NBA does own about 42% of the WNBA. So with all these CBA negotiations, with the end of the month coming up so quickly for that deadline, that is still the big question. The players, as we saw from the exit interview for Nafisa Collier to all throughout, they've been adamant about wanting more revenue sharing because that 9% they're getting in comparison to what the NBA players get, around 50%, a massive gap. But I think Adam Silver may have spoken a bit too soon.
I think so too, and given the fact that our Annie Constable says that the highest max salary right now that's being offered is $850,000, players want a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Well, after 23 years, the NBA is back on NBC with all the nostalgic feels from the 90s. So how was the big premiere for NBC? Let's jump into that and so much more in today's main event. All right, let's bring in front office sports media and entertainment reporter Ryan Glasspiegel. So, Glass, in one word, how would you describe NBC's coverage last night?
I'll use the word big. You know, it's a short word, but it carries a large meaning. And, you know, you just got the sense that NBC wanted to show that this opening night, their return to the NBA after 23 years away was a big deal. And you could see that in the production. You could see that in bringing in Michael Jordan. You could see that in this opening sketch where they asked these players, hey, what are your memories of NBA on NBC? And Victor Wembanyama just laughed. He wasn't alive the last time they had it on. And so then they bring it into this Mike Tirico monologue that reminded you of the days when Marv Albert used to introduce Bulls playoff games. And you're like, okay, this feels like a big deal.
Yeah, and I'm curious your thoughts, since we finally got to see, with all the new talent that they rolled out with NBC, former players and legends and Hall of Famers. What are your thoughts on the broadcast crews in terms of the pregame, halftime, postgame, but also the in-game broadcast of just how well they work together?
Yeah, I mean, with the studio show, they didn't get a ton of time to really show what they're capable of with Maria Taylor, Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, and Tracy McGrady. It was on halftime, and it almost felt like those ESPN NBA finals where Malika Andrews would tee up Stephen A. and Bob Myers and the other people in the studio, and they would get, 2 sentences each. It's okay, back to the advertisements. But in this case, they were doing that Jordan segment. So it's very difficult to give the NBA studio show a grade based on what I saw. The announce team was interesting because, Mike Tirico hadn't called an NBA game since he left ESPN for NBC in 2016. So almost a decade. It did not feel like someone was rusty with him calling the game. He was on it. He's on all the details. He knows all the right beats. is a 3-man booth, and those are always tricky in the first place. So Tirico and Jamal Crawford and Reggie Miller still kind of gaining chemistry. It almost felt like a basketball team, like the Rockets, for example. They're integrating new pieces. The offense, all of a sudden, they're just like throwing the ball out of bounds because someone didn't know where they were supposed to be. That sounds like a little bit of an insult, but I think that they're still kind of feeling each other out, where Miller and Crawford are like, okay, is it your turn or is it my turn? And you can kind of see, okay, they'll get this together in the coming months.
It is the early part of the season for them, too.
Yeah, exactly. The other big thing, obviously, you mentioned Michael Jordan. We got his first real appearance on television in a long time, but NBC had sort of been touting him as a special correspondent in this taped interview with Mike Tirico. What are your thoughts on that, and is this going to be what we're going to see from MJ for the rest of its time on NBC?
It's interesting. So there's like a phrase in show business, always keep the people wanting more. And that was exactly what they did with Jordan. I mean, he tells this story about how he rented a Ryder Cup house. He hasn't picked up a basketball in years. And the homeowner is like, Michael, I need you to shoot a free throw.
So much pressure.
It's like the most nervous he's been in years. And of course, by his telling, he swished it. I mean, that story wasn't going to end any other way. And like pretty much if anybody else tells that story, like if they tried to get like LeBron to tell that story, I'd be like, who cares? Stop. Whatever. But it's Jordan. And so it's like oddly captivating. And then, but here's what they did. They teased next week that Jordan is going to talk about load management. You're like, oh, I'm going to have to see that. Like, because, the story that he told yesterday, I don't think they were giving us the best material from his interview with Tirico, but they're going to milk that couple hours of footage for months. And, we're going to get very used to the attire that they were wearing in that. And it's going to be like, okay, when are we going to get into talking about what's happened this season?
True.
Probably not until 2026.
Brian Glass-Steagall, good stuff as always. And coming up next, everyone on the show, ESPN's Brian Windhorst previews the season for us. That's next.
Buy or sell, Genti will finish the season as the top rookie fantasy running back. And I guess I would ask this question to you, George. Who the bleep is he competing with at this point? It is so ugly at running back in fantasy. RJ Harvey has done nothing. Omarion Hampton is hurt. Caleb Johnson, does anybody even know where that guy is? He doesn't even play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, what am I missing here? Oh, there's one. There's one that I'm missing. There's one that I'm missing.
I'll name that for you. I'll name the guy you didn't mention there. Well, Henderson's another guy, by the way. The New England Patriots don't trust, right? They don't play him. But the guy that could compete with Genti, would be the name that you said you loved during preseason. You love this guy's name, Cam Scatterbo, right? He'd be the guy. He's right there with them. The only problem for Cam would be, A, it is the Giants. Their schedule is brutal. And B, Tracy should return. So that's going to take away. Cam will be the starters. I think he will be. But Tracy's going to eat up some touches there. So that's my only issues there. But I think he's the guy who competes with Genti for that number one overall role, which I'm shocked. I'm shocked that it's not Hampton, but he got hurt. Shocked that it's not Henderson, but they don't like him. Shocked whatever, RJ Harvey in Denver, whatever's going on here. Will he finish the season at his top? This is a little different when I say I automatically take the field here because there's only one other guy. I'm going to buy this. Genti's the best guy, but would I be surprised if it's Scatterbo? No, I would not.
Yeah, I'm going to sell this for the guy that I just forgot about in Cam Scatterbo. I guess the only concern that I would have, and it's a slight one, is that in a couple of weeks, Tyrone Tracy comes back.
Fantasy Sports Today. Fridays starting at 3 p.m. Eastern. Only on SportsGrid.
And welcome back back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today with Renee Washington and Baker Machado. Well, the 80th NBA season is officially here, and so many storylines as well, from LeBron and Giannis's future to international expansion to so many stars injured for the first part of the season. So there's nobody else we'd rather get into some of these headlines with than the great Brian Windhorst. He, of course, is ESPN's NBA writer and host of the Brian Windhorst and the Hoop Collective podcast. Brian, great to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's first start with the tip-off. You know, we had 2 great games, 4 great teams at the opener. Are these 4 maybe true contenders?
You know, I think one stood out unlike the others, and that was the Lakers. And you have to acknowledge they didn't have LeBron James. So, but the other 3 teams sort of embody what has become really the order of the day, which is the depth that goes on. The top teams have so much depth. It's something that has really become a focal point because we're in an era where people are getting hurt. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's star players. And so these teams are really leaning into to depth. And the Lakers aren't quite there. Their depth, for various reasons, just isn't there. And while they did add some pieces to their roster, they were pieces that were sort of cast-offs from other places. And so I think the Lakers are a good team. I just think when you look at, you know, the Thunder, for example, they were missing one of their core players, Jalen Williams, and they had a second-year guy, a guy named A.J. Mitchell, who, unless you are a Thunder fan, you probably don't even know who he was, step up and score 16 points because they have focused so much on development with their depth. And he just signed a contract extension this offseason. Like, you look at the Thunder, for example, and you say, oh, yeah, what sort of business they do this offseason? Well, they signed Chet Holmgren, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Jalen Williams. Awesome work. And I agree. They're not going back to the finals without those 3 guys. But you want to know why a team might win on an average Tuesday throughout the course of the next 5 months? It's because they have players like A.J. Mitchell, who they drafted and they signed to a contract extension this offseason. The Lakers haven't been able to do that as well. I think if you look at their last 5 years of draft picks, they've only extended one of those players, which was a second-round pick, Max Christie, who they traded for Luka. So the depth on the Warriors, the depth on the Rockets, the depth on Oklahoma City shows that this is going to be a season where these top teams in the West are just so deep, and that's why they're going to be so hard to beat.
Well, Brian, let's stick with the Lakers because we are going to get the first full year of Luka with the Lakers. And aside from their loss, when you look at his 43-point near triple-double, with LeBron being out, I wonder if it gives them a chance to see what it looks like to continue to have Luka lead this team. But how do you think that LeBron and Luka will mesh together in this season in terms of their roles and identities?
Yeah, so for the first time, really in LeBron's 23-year career, you can say that he is not the primary focus of the franchise, nor is he the future of the franchise. And even when he was leaving teams, even when he was, going to free agency and he changed teams 3 different times, those teams still viewed him as the future of their franchise. He just elected to move elsewhere. And so the future of the Lakers franchise is really 2 people. Luka Doncic and Mark Walter, who in sometime in the next few months will take over as the owner of the team. Other than that, I don't know who's going to be involved with the Lakers or who will be with the Lakers in a couple of years. If you look at this team in particular, I believe 8 of their players can be free agents at the end of the season. Some of them have options. They might not all be free agents. So I don't even know how many of these players will be Lakers next year. I do know that with Luka, who extended his contract in the offseason, is committed to being the Lakers long-term, and all of their decisions going forward will be based on supporting Luka. And so they're sort of in this in-between period. And in all honesty, I know that because they're the Lakers and because their fan base is so intense and because their history is so, decorated, that the expectation is that the Lakers begin every season as a title favorite. The truth is, while this Lakers team can definitely achieve, especially if LeBron returns to health, I have no idea how many of these Lakers are even medium-term players for them. And they're in this period where they're about to flip their whole franchise around from the ownership suite on downward. And so they're in a big period of change, but they've got to play this season out and try to get the most out of what could be LeBron's last year. So it's an odd situation to be in. LeBron's never been in it. Certainly Luka's never been in it. The Lakers are in a situation that very few teams have ever been in, where they have an all-time great player that they've got to put their arm around and escort to the door, while also building with their new franchise player. And this wasn't something that they had like a 3-year plan on. This fell out of the sky to them last year when they were in the middle of another project. So they are in an awkward spot. And I know I'm in Los Angeles right now. I spend a lot of time in Los Angeles. There's just this intense, interest from the Laker fan base, who is so big and so passionate, and they want to be like, are we going to win tonight's game? When I think that the Lakers project is really a much more multifaceted, longer term, unusual period that they're actually in here.
Brian, let's move out east. Obviously, it's not nearly as competitive as it is in the Western Conference. I mean, we've got two of the best teams in the East going head-to-head tonight in the Knicks and the Cavs. How would you sort of assess the Eastern Conference, and do you think the sort of questions about Giannis's future maybe will overshadow who could be dominant in the East?
It's possible. It depends, I think, on how the Bucks season goes. As we sit here on October 22nd, opening day in the NBA, I think about 4 players that I have a big question mark about, that I don't know what's going to be going on with them on April 15th. And I truly don't know. That's Kyrie Irving, who is coming back from an ACL. Is he going to be a real factor? I don't know. Jason Tatum. It's very unusual to expect a player to return from an Achilles tear, but he is younger and is showing promise. If he comes back to the Celtics, it's a game changer. I don't know. I don't know how he's going to be in 6 months. Giannis Antetokounmpo, is he going to be a Buck in April? I don't know. I know that he has said that he's going to play the year for Milwaukee, and he said he's going to reassess the situation in 6 to 7 months. But he was involved in the decision, in a concept of being traded in August. And star players who want traded in August frequently, not all of the time, but frequently also want to be traded in January or February. And LeBron James, who we also don't know health-wise where he's going to be at the end of the season. And after his agent Rich Paul's comments to ESPN over the summer about where he's going to be, I don't know where he's going to be. So if you could tell me where those 4 guys are in April, I would have a lot better feel of how this season goes.
All right, Brian, don't go anywhere. We're going to have more with you coming up here in just a moment. We're going to take a quick break. More Front Office Sports right after this.
You just see Texas in any game, and again, Kentucky used to be able to put up points in the past. 43.5 is crazy because it just feels like Texas is going to come in, play really good defense, and try to squeeze this game out. It'll be interesting to see because nothing got ailed from that victory last week. Texas is back. I'm just being facetious at this point, but if we see one of those performances, 17-14 Texas
in the fourth quarter,
yeah, come on,
right? I mean, really, they got a gift last week.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It looks like the Bengals fantasy pieces are back. What did you make of that Joe Flacco performance on Thursday night? Turning back time.
Yeah, it was great for a guy like me with gray in the beard. I love seeing it. I love my representation. But at the end of the day, just from a wagering standpoint, if this continues, it'll give some consistency and it'll give some value back to those tools that you were mentioning on the Bengals.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Defense is above average this year, and I think big picture they're going to be probably the most consistent moving forward. The problem I have is this guy, Trevor Lawrence, big picture. You got to take the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the ugly sometimes is real ugly. He is not comfortable in the pocket on a consistent basis, and that's a problem.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
We've had an undefeated regular season a couple times in the NFL. The Patriots, of course, did it before losing in the Super Bowl to the Giants. The 72 Dolphins, of course, did it en route to a Super Bowl win. But to go winless is harder than to win every single game. And my New York Jets are well on their way to doing this.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today with Renee. I'm Baker, and more with ESPN NBA writer Brian Windhorst, of course, also the podcast host of Brian Windhorst and the Hoop Collective.
So much unknown around, especially the superstars and where they will be even come trade deadline. But something we do know about the superstars, there's such a large group of superstars in the NBA that are international players.
Oh, true.
Coming into this season, the largest amount of international players we've seen across the league ever. And the big names, SGA, Luka, Jokic, Wemby, Giannis, they are international players that grew up watching the NBA. So as the league's trying to expand their global footprint, I'm curious your thoughts regarding how much having those international superstars will help continue to expand the NBA and reach the next generation of the future Wembys and Lukas and SGAs.
Yeah, so last year in the top 5, you put 5 players on your ballot for MVP. So really the top, and really, if you get to the top 5 in MVP, if you're on that list, to me, that's really the definition of being a superstar, is if you can be on the MVP ballot at all. Even if you get votes, you're kind of like a superstar. And last year we only had one, I think we only had one American on there, which is Jason Tatum. And this year Jason Tatum's not going to be on there. And very possible that this is Victor Wembanyama's year to move into that conversation. Hopefully he can stay healthy, because I think he's going to rise to that. And I'm someone who has spent a lot of time overseas covering international basketball. I'm very attuned to the international basketball scene, and I think it's very important to spread the NBA outside its borders. But I also think it is important for the NBA to remember that its core business is in the United States. And particularly the NBA has 2 new media partners this year, and they need to make sure those media partners are happy with what they have. And, it is a challenge for the NBA to be able to develop the next American stars.
Yeah, I completely agree. A lot of great points you mentioned there, Brian. I want to shift as we get ready to wrap up in regards to tonight's excitement, of course, because we got to see NBC's broadcast with all they rolled out with the nostalgia. We get to see now what ESPN, what Prime, or what their broadcasts are going to look like, as well as just more teams making their season debut. What are you most looking forward to tonight in terms of how the league's going to continue this exciting opening week?
Well, I am excited about our new teammates here at ESPN, the Inside the NBA crew. I just have so much respect for them. They have driven the popularity and the growth of the sport for a long time. And so for them to be with us at ESPN is a great opportunity and a great thing that's going to add to our coverage. I'm just excited to be, involved with them. And I really do think that there are a lot of teams this year that are going to really excite their fan bases. The Thunder are a really good team, and it's hard to say that they shouldn't be the absolute favorite. But there's 6 to 8 teams who I think can really convince themselves that they would have a shot at beating the Thunder in 7. And let's remember that even though the Thunder are excellent, they had to win 2 Game 7s last year. This was not the 2001 Lakers or whatever, that went through with 1 loss. This was a team that was challenged. And whether it's Denver, whether it's, I think the Clippers are a team that is to be seriously considered. The Rockets are absolutely a team. In the East, as crazy as this is, the Philadelphia 76ers, as we sit here and record this on a Wednesday afternoon, the 76ers are one of the healthiest contenders in the East. Will they be a healthy contender in 48 hours? I cannot guarantee that. But when you look at the Knicks and the Cavs have injuries to start the season. Obviously, 3 of the top teams in the East lost star players to Achilles tears. Joel Embiid is going to play tonight, and Paul George is not far behind. It's very possible. And so Philadelphia, they operate in a world with no expectation, but they could engage their fan base this year.
All right, thank you so much, Brian, and let's see what's bubbling over at the FOS water cooler. Well, Renee, after a surprise 1-5 start to the season, the Baltimore Ravens are officially grounded. The Baltimore Sun says the team removed all fun distractions from the locker room. That includes ping pong tables, a basketball hoop, and even video game consoles. The team reportedly did this to make the locker room more business-like, but it sounds pretty boring to me.
They've lost their video game privileges. It is wild because I remember in the offseason when they were announcing all these renovations and updates, from the pool to recovery to even players having access to recreational things like this. It was such an exciting story, but here we are after 4 losses in a row, a team that was at one point one of the highest scoring offenses, but giving up the most points defensively.
Right.
Their coaches said that is enough. So after a bye week, bye-bye to their games and recreation because they need to mean business. Let's hope it means more wins for the Ravens.
Maybe, but you would think that the players want this to bond with each other. What are they going to do without the cornhole games?
Now they need to focus less on cornhole and video games and more on winning their own games.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this show. Renee and I are back for way more fun tomorrow. We'll see you later.